Welcome to another Smart Driving Cars podcast. We're glad you are here. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to MOTOETF.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi again, Alan.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Bright and early. Sure is. This week, Tesla held what has become its annual AI Day. A lot of news there to talk about. And to help us, we are happy to have back with us Tim Higgins from the Wall Street Journal, author of a new book on an Amazon bestseller titled Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. Thanks for joining us again, Tim.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
Hey, congratulations on being up there. Okay. When you become a rich guy, you're going to invite me to a party or something? Anyway.
Absolutely. Well, my experience is you always know where the best parties are. So,
well, Tim, your book chronicles the inside story of how Tesla has become the dominant maker of electric vehicles and the role Elon Musk has played, and the company's AI 2021 Day continues the saga. And it comes on the heels of another big development earlier in the week, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration launching an investigation into a series of Tesla autopilot crashes involving emergency vehicles. First, Tim, what were the key takeaways for you in watching AI Day?
Well, talk about awkward timing, right? I mean, clearly, as I lay out in my book, Power Play, part of the success that Elon has had has been being able to sell his vision of the future, vision for electric cars, vision for self-driving cars, vision for solar. And he sometimes has been successful in his timelines for bringing out this technology, and sometimes he hasn't. And on this week, when the government is probing what he can do with autopilot, and then to be talking about where they are, the state of the art of AI, there's the potential there for conflict, right? Because he's talking about what he wants to do, whereas the government is talking about what's actually going on. And that's kind of the challenge I think we're going to see with Tesla going forward in the next few years, is kind of these growing pains or learning, kind of growing up kind of to do on kind of deploying this kind of technology. So I just start off by saying that. And then the other big takeaway that I was kind of, as I was watching this event, was thinking about how Elon had said on Twitter that this was really about a recruiting event. And I think there was some skepticism going in among people that it was a recruiting event, that this was another example of him going out talking about future technology to maybe boost the stock or something like that. And, without a doubt, he needs to be out there talking about what's next, because that's an important part of the Tesla brand. But an important thing, I think, Alan, you are probably aware of the fight for talent. The fight for AI talent in Silicon Valley is brutal. There, it's just not enough of these really smart people who can do these kinds of things. And it's everyone from Google to Facebook to Tesla to General Motors Cruise. You got Argo AI. They're all out there looking for people who are on the cutting edge in AI, and it's brutally competitive. So one of the things that Tesla has in its recruiting toolbox is the star power of Elon Musk, and we have seen throughout the years, even during the darkest times. I remember being on the factory floor in 2018, and all attention is on whether they can ramp production of the Model 3 to the levels that are needed. And he's sleeping there, and he says, well, wait a second, he's got to leave. He's going to go fly to an AI event for a recruiting session. He's only going to be there for an hour or so, and he's going to come back to the factory. That's just how important it is that he sees to be recruiting in the AI field. And so I think the event was, in large part, I think the motivation was to get AI talent into the company.
Let me see if I can jump in on that one, if I may. If you're correct, I'm not suggesting you're not correct, that this was a recruiting event. He hit it out of the park. He hit it out of the park. I mean, I sat there and I said, wow. I said to myself, and I don't know, it's just me. I'm one person. I'm not. where am I going to suggest my students look? What about the students that graduate or are in this? Where should they be? Oh my goodness. If that was his objective, I think he hit it absolutely out of the park. I was the toolbox, the environment, the opportunities to actually do this, and the things that he talked about putting together and seemingly having together. Now, there may be smoke and mirrors all over this place, all over the place here. I looked for them. I didn't see them. When they were holding up the chip out, it could have been any chip. Okay. Maybe they faked it, but it certainly didn't look it. And the almost tears in the eyes of the folks, so proud of what they did. I mean, I don't think those folks can fake that. I mean, I think it was, I said to myself, if I'm not here at Princeton, I'm there, I'm going to be knocking on the door, because where do I think I might be able to do the stuff that I might want to do with this? But what one needs is, when he's talking about putting together the compute power to do this, I mean, you don't know what the hell my students and I have to do here at Princeton to try to put together compute power to do 1/1,000,000th of what he's doing. And it seems to me like I wasn't, or maybe it's my stupidity, but I just wasn't aware that let's say the infrastructure that he's put together, that was described there, to be able to take this stuff forward. And then forget about the humanoid thing. I mean, that's part of the glitz. That
So let's talk about that at a certain point. But
we'll talk about that at some point. But whatever. He's got to have some glitz. I don't know. Talk to me here.
Well, I mean, I'm interested to hear what you say on that, Alan, because I think there's been this tension in the last few years over the dramatic claims that he's made about the abilities of the car, right? Claiming fully self-driving capabilities.
Yeah.
When I think folks like you would say, well, they don't have that. That is an ADAS system. And so, if you're trying to attract people who want to do fully self-driving capability, who want to do the avant-garde, you sometimes have to lift the tent up a little bit and let people see what's going on. And it would seem to be that was really what was going on at this event, was to show the AI talent out there that this is what they're working on. Now, I think some people were looking for announcements or proclamations, and we didn't really get a lot of that, right? I mean, so if you're an investor, you're probably a little bit confused about what you saw, but it sounds to me like you're saying, if you're in the AI field and you're looking for a job, then you saw a lot there that you want to go see more. You're really inspired to go work there. So maybe it was a success.
Yeah, if I'm top of the food chain and I can have my pick as to whether I'm going to go to Facebook, or I'm going to go to Google, or I'm going to go to Apple, or I'm going to go to Amazon, or I'm going to go to, you name the whatever, or I'm going to go to one of the pharmaceuticals and develop the whatever. I mean, what everybody sort of wants when one's doing that is what's the entourage, what's the support, what are the things that I'm going to have to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish, because it doesn't all just, doesn't all come from that. And I just thought, I mean, in some sense, what propelled NVIDIA and so on. The NVIDIA thing was, my goodness, the people there, the working on what they were. It wasn't just a gaming shop. Okay, all of a sudden it was a gaming shop and a Fortune 500 in terms of whatever the heck you want to do there that's going to break things open. And in a sense, what's Amazon done? It's same thing. The fundamental tools, and what I took away was the sort of the leadership aspect that says it's like, Google's Project X's or whatever they were, that, said you go out and innovate too. It seems like, I don't know that. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I think you're hitting something that's, throughout the history of Tesla, with Elon as CEO, this has been a key advantage that he has had versus some of his rivals, and that is ability to inspire people to come work for him, right? When he's working on the Model S project to be in early days,
Yeah.
he had to build a team of people who wanted to do something that hadn't been done before,
Right.
in a way that was unique and hard and really risky. And you're looking at this future of fully self-driving, and there are lots of players out there, and it's not by, it comes at a time when I think some in the field may be a little bit frustrated. I think there was a very good article in Bloomberg Business Week this week about the struggles at Waymo, at Alphabet's Waymo. We go back a few years and there was all these hope and optimism that robot taxis would be on the road, and it just hasn't happened the way that a lot of people, maybe not the experts, maybe the analysts in the world, were hoping for. And you can tell there's this frustration that you see. And I think one of the things mentioned in that article was frustration that they weren't able to deploy in the scale that they wanted to, right? So if you're looking at these other companies and you're looking at what Tesla is doing, this event might inspire you. So that's kind of what Elon is trying to do, right? He's trying to get people who want to push things. Now, the challenge, of course, is the safety, and that's why these other companies have become frustrated, right? Putting this technology on the road is potentially dangerous, and it's more of a crawl than a sprint.
Well, the other things that I was listening for, I wanted them to be a little bit more humble and so on about this, as opposed to going out there and saying, hey, go out and buy one of these things and you're going to make money off of it and you'll be able to send it out there. The stuff that I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Right.
I thought he was almost humble.
It was almost a reset, right? A reset of the conversation.
I am so, I tell you, I am so appreciative of that. Not who cares what the hell, but really, and he said several times, the fundamental fabric is safety. He said it, and it didn't seem like it was forced. Okay. It didn't seem like it was forced at all. It didn't seem like he was saying it for the benefit of all the investigations that are going on and so on. And I think that, to me, I again, maybe this is what I wanted to hear. He said this is a really tough problem, and what they've decided to do is basically almost go back to the fundamental beginning and put together the infrastructure that you need to be able to go over the next hurdle, because the tools and stuff that existed up to this point in time haven't gotten us there. Now, again, I may be reading a whole, and if I'm a competitor, if I'm thinking I'm going to do this, all of a sudden, if I don't have the tools, if I don't have the shovel, if I don't have the pan to do the gold rush, I'm not going to get any gold.
He had a message for those competitors, though, Alan. He said you can license our technology.
Hey, now, so Tim, what do you take of that? Or should we get Adam Jonas in here to tell us about that one or something like that? I
Sure.
mean, I don't know. Hey, again, who am I? I live in this bubble, whatever. But if I'm a competitor, and I really think that the evolution of the vehicle, it has to have these fins and this chrome on it. Otherwise, I don't compete. If it can't stay in the center of the lane, and if it can't do intelligent cruise control well, and if it continues to crash, then I'm not in business. And
right.
and now, what do I do? Do I just license, or do I really have to say, okay, I have to go build this whole infrastructure? I have to build the compute power to be able to train this thing with the zillions of data elements and so on to do this. Otherwise, I mean, I got to figure out a really elegant way to get around all this and do this really easily, which of course I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah. it's interesting, his comments about, being open to licensing. I mean, he's throughout kind of the history of the company, he's often said stuff like this when pressed, and it's almost, I always kind of take it as like, well, sure, if somebody wants to pay us for this, would be great, right? But you never really see any of that kind of play out. I mean, early on, you saw the company help or make some money with deals with Mercedes and Toyota, with powertrain elements for their early electric cars. But that seemed to be more about those companies trying to understand what an electric car startup was about. These days, the company is talking about opening up its supercharger network to rivals, but that would seem to be motivated by the fact that governments around the world are talking about pouring money into charging infrastructures, and so that probably is tied to that. His comments the other night about licensing the technology. I mean, it could be a potential business, but I don't know what the market would be, given that companies from General Motors to Ford to Volkswagen, they all seem to have picked their partners in that realm. And it's almost, there's almost this kind of feeling like going back to the days of the original car, that you need to own that capability, right? You're going to own your own motors, you're going to own your own engines, and you're going to develop them. And they've picked their dance partners. We see them doing it. The question will be, in a few years, did they pick the right dance partner, right? And maybe you're right, Alan. Maybe Tesla will emerge as one of the people or one of the companies out there that can provide this technology, to other OE or other automakers in a way that provides an interesting business.
But if you look at a Qualcomm, for example, at one point they did their own chips and they decided, hey, we can just we transform our company by licensing and stuff,
Sure.
And really, and in a sense, to me, this almost looks somewhat similar. In the end, who might it have been that would provide all these AI gizmos in cars? It might be a Bosch or the typical supplier, or a Continental or something like that, or whatever. Or I would suspect that Mobileye thought itself as the entity that might end up doing that kind of thing. All of a sudden, because this problem is really hard and a heck of a lot harder than maybe anybody really appreciated. The amount, the cost of entry to compete in this thing, and on the trajectory that it's on now, on the innovation and platform that it's on now, has gotten to be really high, simply because you need so much really good data, so much really high horsepower compute to be able to calibrate these damn models and figure out what the gazillion coefficient should be so they don't crash. And you have to find all these curveballs and sliders that Mother Nature is throwing at you and get around them. And that just requires infrastructure. And it looks like he put, when he started this, Fred probably can go back to some stuff that I wrote. I said, there's no way he's going to do that. He's hired 10 people. This is tougher than that. All of a sudden, internally in there, whatever. Maybe it's just because I haven't watched carefully enough, but I was blown over.
What specifically, Alan, did you share with us on the technical aspects here that has made you so impressed with
exaflops? 10 to the 18th computations per. Now, whether or not you can parallelize your process to take advantage of all that, you really don't have the bottlenecks, and you really don't have the IO but as they explain their stack on their, this is, if you're really going to do it, you have to approach it this way. And now, this is, in a sense, this is there, I've kind of wanted to always argue there was an elegant algorithm somewhere for collision avoidance. Why? As I tell my students and so on, they come in my office and I say, look, I'm sure there have been fleas in my office, yet you don't see fleas splattered all over the walls. Why? Because in like the 3 neurons they have in their brains, they're able to do collision avoidance. Now, how in the hell do you really do collision avoid? I know, with what we have and so on, and the visual cortex and and all the stuff we have here, But there's a flea. I mean, what's it have? So there's somewhere buried in this thing is really some elegant algorithm that we've all been searching for, and where we're at now with all this deep learning neural net that's thrown in there is somewhat of a brute force approach. And to be able to do a brute force approach, boy, you've got to be a brute. And it looks like he's put together the bruteness, not to continue on the discussion, that I don't know. That's the way I took it. And for somebody to now compete with them, they've got to at least match them. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. And I don't know. Tim, talk to me here.
I think you're hitting on seeing your excitement. I think is probably what the hope of the event was, right? To prove to the AI community that they were actually in the game, rather than just making wild claims like they had in the past. I mean, you go back to Autonomous Day 2 years ago, and this was, this seemed to be that event, the 2 year ago event, seemed to be aimed at the investor community to convince them that they were on the path to autonomy,
right?
And that played a little bit differently. I think there were people coming away from that where there was some frustration perhaps in the community that were they really working on anything that was serious, right? They put Wall Street analysts into cars and gave them demonstrations, but by all accounts, they sounded like the rather routine demonstrations that we've all been in, that are easy to throw together, that I'm sure your students
and have mirrors and whatever all over the place, smoke
right.
and mirrors all over the place.
And then Elon made bold claims about 1 million robot taxis on the road by 2020, and we just haven't seen any of that, so there's a lot of, I think there's been a healthy skepticism about what's really going on there. And it would seem to be that this event was trying to show that there's a serious effort there to put them back in the conversation that they're really working on this, right? I mean, I would say, one of the takeaways I had from watching the event was I didn't see anything that would suggest they're ready to deploy level 5 or level 4 cars in the near future, right?
Right.
And that would be kind of different tonality from where Elon was 2 years ago, right? And so, I think you hit on this a little bit before, that in some ways it's almost a reset. Not the bold statements of a robot taxi fleet taking over the world in any moment, but trying to do the homework. Now, I think the experts could disagree over the approach, right? But that's normal in engineering, right? The idea, where's the LiDAR versus the camera vision? That's a healthy, robust debate that will play out. But they were at least trying to talk about what they're working on, which is a little bit of a change. And some of it goes back to early days of the company, where they knew they were putting electric cars on the road that people were not familiar with, and they knew they had to educate people on. And I think one of the criticisms that Elon has received in recent years about autopilot in particular is his reluctance to really really discuss in a robust way what's going on. The safety figures and the company just seems to has clammed up over what's going on with autopilot, right? And part of that is because of the investigations that we now have been launched and in the legal liability. But you're at least seeing this the other night, this kind of attempt to show what the homework looks like.
Let's talk.
I think
Go ahead, Alan.
it's a really I'd like to call it a grown-up way to take now the situation and say, okay, we're in this, and this is what we need to do, and that's the way I took it. I thought it was. There were a few things that were of course missing, and I think they're missing a couple of things with respect to dealing with all this, irrespective of all the images and showings of cars driving down. I mean, sitting there and doing it just in the suburbs of flat land, and never did they pass under an underpass. And I still think they have a problem. They're focusing way too much on the surface versus what's sticking up from the surface. And I think that, which is my big, it seems like they've jumped over this automated, the automatic emergency braking piece of all this. And it's trivial for them to go back now and fix it. I think they have the tools to deal with that. Boom, take it on, go and update all the vehicles and move on. I mean, I just think they have the tools to do that if they just see it and do it. And so that's a minor thing on that. And I just to be able to now do this, to realize that the problem is really tough, and we have to go back and do the homework and put together the infrastructure that then lead us. I don't know. I was impressed.
Tim, tell me what insights you have about the format here, because you had a group of Tesla engineers up front who each gave more or less a little presentation, and Musk himself certainly conversant on all of this. I mean, he seems to know everything about everything that's going on there. And then there's the audience. Who's in the audience? Because the questions were really very technical and on point. These weren't people like me.
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, this was a recruiting audience, people they were trying to perhaps recruit into come work for their AI program. I mean, and that's critical. Elon has the ability, that Star Watt power, to get people to show up, and these events can be kind of a festival of ideas for folks like that, right? And so, that's one of the key things that they need to be doing is getting that talent in to be working on these projects, right? He's sold that future vision, and now he needs to hire the people to make it happen, right? So that's key.
Yeah, and
people,
go ahead.
People on stage, I think, is interesting. We've started to see this in recent years, where it's not just the Elon Musk show on stage, but he brings out the next kind of the tier of leaders in these projects. On Autonomy Day 2 years ago, we saw those kind of leaders of that project. Last year during Battery Day, we saw some of the brains behind that. And it's this challenge that Elon has, the challenge that Tesla has, is that he has smart people there, but sometimes he's reluctant. He's reluctant to kind of put them out there, either because he doesn't want to have them poached, or sometimes the history would be clear that sometimes he doesn't like it when they get attention and he doesn't get that when they get attention and he doesn't, right? There's that tension we've seen in the past. It's the Elon Musk and Tesla kind of show, but to give the program credibility, it would seem that he's buying into the idea that he needs to show that there are these people working on it and have people hear what they're doing.
And one of the things that I took away, let's not do names, but a Daimler or a GM wanting to put on a similar thing, I don't see how they do it. Maybe because in these leadership positions, I don't know, maybe it's my unfortunate view, they tend to have more, I guess, marketing folks than whatever. And or maybe that's because I'm such a techno nerd that I only appreciate my kind. I'm sorry, Tim.
I mean, I think you are hitting on something. Imagine a Mary Barra, the CEO of General Motors. It's hard to imagine her getting down into the nitty gritty on engineering, AI engineering. But GM also has in their toolbox, the leadership at Cruise, which
Yeah.
These are not these are
Absolutely.
some big names in Silicon Valley as well. But you are hitting on this point that Elon is a celebrity in his own right, and he has a lot of wattage there, and so. If you have an event where he's going to be at, and you're trying to recruit engineers, that's a hard thing to compete against. One of the issues for Tesla is they don't traditionally have the greatest history of paying very well in the Valley. They don't pay as well as a Google, for example. They don't have the same kind of perks. Though you would look at the stock, and that's done pretty well. So there's that tension.
Jesus. Yeah, no, I would think if they just pass out a couple of those guys, they should be pretty darn happy, shouldn't they? But go ahead.
The other thing is Elon has as much as he is a star, he also has quite a reputation for how he treats people. And this is an interesting thing. I've studied this dynamic for a while. On one hand, Tesla is very it's at the front of the pack for places for new college grads, recent grads to go work for. They want to go work there. They're excited to go work for. On the other hand, people don't last there very long. Typically, you see a lot of people going in and out, in part because they vest or they earn their stock and they go on to the next thing. There are lots of stories of the way Elon can become very volatile during some stressful periods. So it's just a unique environment that depends upon him pulling in raw talent on a continual basis.
Yeah, well, any of these companies require that, and I guess he's been able to do it. SpaceX looks like it's able to do it. I don't know to what extent the Boring Company is doing it. In part, I've had one of my students as a summer intern this past summer or this past year because he took a gap year. So when we're gonna have some very nice discussions about about that and when the innovation that's going on there. And but these to me these are classic Silicon Valley with substance. I mean, what irks me is that there are some companies out there that it is nothing, but it looks like it's nothing but smoke and mirrors, or it is, and it just distresses me. But go ahead, Tim.
Well, Alan, I think you've hit it on, just seeing your reaction to the event and, some other reaction, one of the things that throughout the time of Tesla that you hear about people going there, why they're motivated to go there, is this belief that they can do something novel or that they can put their mark on the world. And that this is an important kind of motivator to getting these talented people. Whereas, they could perhaps go to a more stable company or a bigger company. There's concerns among some of that talent that maybe they'll be lost or maybe they won't have an impact. Whereas you see that the tools that Elon is laying out there, and you can get excited that you think you're going to do something.
Yeah, I mean, it's been my good fortune with the students that I've had around me. I mean, it's just luck for me being here at Princeton. But I look at my students, what do they want to do? They want to go make a difference. I mean, GM used to give out fellowships to students. This is going back 40 years now, and bring them in as summer interns, give them 2 years of full tuition, whatever. If they would come to work for GM, and they'd all bail on GM. They wouldn't want. They go out there and maybe this is the old GM, but you can imagine. Thinking you have to be someplace for 30 years before you might be able to order pencils or something.
Right.
I mean, I'm of course overstating it,
sure.
But boy, where they want to go, where they have an opportunity to go to Mars. I mean, That's where when I was there, I wanted to go to Mars in the 60s. Okay, that's what I was in, whatever.
Yeah, and it's an important thing. It's one of the things that Tesla hasn't become. I mean, they're 18 years old. They it's old in the Valley, but they still have kept that kind of startup mentality in a lot of ways, right? And that in a lot of ways, they still are a startup. They haven't answered all of the business questions they probably need to do. And that will be one of the challenges as you look over the next year or two, is balancing the need to put resources into AI, balancing the need to put the most important resource, which is Elon's time and the team's time, versus the cold realities of where they are at the business, right? Like, there are 2 assembly factories going up right now, one outside of Berlin, one outside of Austin, Texas, launching the Cybertruck, working on battery tech development. Those are key linchpins of where the company is now. And Tesla doesn't have a great track record with working on multiple projects at the same time. It's kind of the Model 3, then the Model Y, kind of a cadence. And as the company is going to kind of get to that next level, they're going to have to be able to develop that, right? And so, and part of being able to do that is recruiting the talent and the leadership into the company to handle multiple tracks at the same time. If they're going to be the GM of the 21st century, they've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, we're going to take a break in just a second here, but before we do, let's share how Elon Musk wrapped up the event, channeling Alan to elevate the discussion.
Oh, geez. No wonder I liked it.
I think in the future, people will look back and say, wow, I can't believe we had to drive these cars ourselves. It'll like self-driving cars will just be just a normal, like self-driving elevators. Elevators used to have elevator operators, and there's someone there with a big relay switch operating the elevator, and then every now and then they'd get tired or make a mistake and shear somebody in half. So now we made the elevators automatic, and you just go and you press the button, and you can be in a 100-story skyscraper and don't really worry about it. Just go in and press the button, and the elevator takes you where you want to go. But it used to be that all elevators were operated manually. It'll be the same thing like for cars. All cars will be automatic, and then and electric, obviously. So there will still be some gasoline cars and some manual cars, just like there are still some horses. So. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming, and hope you enjoyed the presentation, and thank you for the great questions. All right.
Yeah, Fred. So, it's funny
those
because
lines are really familiar to anybody who's paid attention to the podcast or one of your classes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't think I heard it from him. I don't know where it came from when I started spouting that, but whatever. If he gets the next piece of the elevator concept, which is, the elevator is not owned by individuals. It's out there as a service by providers. If he picks up on that and decides to now develop, the cyber autonomous taxi or whatever he calls it, and puts the technology on there, he could leapfrog Waymo with the tools he has. And whether or not he ever sees that as the business, as opposed to seeing the business piece of Tesla is to sell cars. And Adam Jonas, how many years ago sort of said, hey, it's the ride that's the value here. And if he sees that the ride has a value and he now provides the ride, he's now the elevator. He's Otis. And he puts now the infrastructure he's put together, I think, allows him to leapfrog Waymo. And if he puts it in there and it does go out there and it operates in a Trenton, moving people around, and then it operates in a Mercer County and so on, maybe, that's the business. Not Tim pointed out, they haven't been able to sort of spawn new businesses. One might also argue maybe they have, they did just start with like a roadster and then whatever, and now they're doing roofs for houses, and they're doing, batteries and charging and so on. And, and it could be like an Amazon and Amazon's going to have brick and mortar boxes out there. They now say, whoa, and if this is now really an expansion of the, where did AWS ever come from out of Amazon? I don't know. To me, it came out of nowhere. I mean, this is now out of nowhere in a Tesla that really, because he's built the infrastructure. I don't know if he sees it. I mean, it'll be trivial for him to snap his fingers and go that way, I think, as opposed to us having known him. And I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. What the hell, Tim? I just throw stuff out there.
Well, we'll be back with more, Alan. But first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, we should point out, it's a good idea to read the white paper. It's called the Smart Transportation Revolution. You'll find it under the Insights and News tab. Some great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. ETFs, as you probably know, can be a smart way to spread risk with investments, focus on a particular category of stocks. The website again is motoetf.com. We're back with more of the Smart Driving Cars podcast, and our guest, Tim Higgins from the Wall Street Journal, author of a great new book, Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. And we're talking about the big developments at Tesla this past week. One thing we saw in the video clip in the background before we took the break was the Tesla bot, the humanoid thing. Is that the kind of a sideshow here, Alan and Tim, or is this another new business?
Tim.
Well, it clearly got a lot of attention, which Tesla and Elon are very good at. I think that there's roboticists have been going on and on about this, and how what Elon was promising and talking about would be a lot harder than he seems to realize or alluding to. In some ways, though, I think maybe it was a good sign that it was just a guy dressed up in a robot suit dancing on stage, and not some hundreds of millions of dollars spent on a prototype that was rolled out that had been worked on for the last few years, because that would suggest that Tesla's limited resources had been diverted to that. And right now, it's a year of execution for bringing out, improving the autopilot, for bringing out all these other projects that they have. So, there was a lot of criticism over the fake robot, but in some ways, maybe people could look at it as a positive that they didn't have this thing come out, and the resources had already been diverted. Now, Elon talked about how this thing he's going to have a prototype next year. I think there's a lot of skepticism that we'll actually see that. To me, this was clearly about maybe going viral on Twitter, and that it talks to the bigger idea of what Elon needs to do with Tesla. That's selling the future. That's part of Tesla's brand. If people are excited about the idea that he's working on humanoid robots, then that helps him and helps the company. That's what that was about, I think.
Yeah, well, look, Boston Robotics, has had sort of humanoids and doing dances and did all that, has done all that stuff. And I agree with you, Tim. I am really glad that he didn't do smoke and mirrors stuff with it and so on, to be able to show it. And I don't know, I sort of say to my students, the humanoid is just not the thing. If you really want to replace menial tasks, you look at the task and you do it directly. Just because we've introduced a human to be able to do that is just, just whatever. I mean, look at what's happened to farming. I mean, it used to all be done by hand. Now, 98% of farming is done by these big combines that do and so on. So I don't know. It was, he had to have some glitz. Sort of that. I totally discounted whatever. And if it, if it influences Twitter, whether that's Twitter's problem, I don't know.
It's interesting. I've been to a number of these events with automakers over the years where they've highlighted the effort they're doing on some humanoid-like robot, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Honda's had one for years, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
GM had the one they were working on with NASA. They have the top half. They were really putting a lot of attention into the hand movements. At the time you could see like, well, maybe this would help on the assembly plant. They were gonna, whatever. There's always this idea that car companies could be positioned to be robot manufacturers in the future. But as we know from experts in the field, a general purpose robot is just the technology. We're just not there at this point. The idea that we can just have a robot going around doing all these, like cleaning my house and picking up errands. I mean, that we're just not at that point. We're still struggling with the AI of doing specific items, right? Which is why driving is so hard, right? And as you know, I think probably Alan better than I do. I mean, the way that I think about AI is like, what can your intern do versus what you're going to have your experts do? I mean, it's still the basic kind of functionality.
The intern does Xeroxing. Okay, that's about as much as any. It's not artificial intelligence, boy. It is nowhere near it. I mean, nowhere near it. And probably, in some sense, driving is the easiest problem that AI might be able to do. The rest of it is, and he almost said it at one point. He didn't call it AI. He went into this whole thing about machine learning, and I love it. I'm playing that clip to all my students because all the students want to do machine learning. Oh, we can just throw data at it because I won't even repeat because he used sort of a bad word when he said that. But I mean, again, I loved it. I loved it. I mean, any of this AI stuff is really serious business. And if you really look at it, what you end up at the output of this thing is a probability of an occurrence. And that probability, he even said it, the rule of nines, it doesn't even have a 9 on it, let alone 2 9s, 3 9s, 4 9s. I'd be in the 999999999 perfect. It's not anywhere near. So please, everybody, take a deep breath, or maybe I should take a deep breath. But I thought it was a very grown-up presentation, a mature presentation on what the state is, what the hell we have to do, how much we have to roll up our arms and work that we have to do to get this thing. And he said it many times. So safety is the fabric of this thing. Being safe is the fundamental fabric. He
said that, Alan, but at the same time, he did not directly address the NHTSA investigation.
No, and it would have been a shame if he did, and so on. And then NHTSA investigation can go on, and I think it needs to go on and focus on what the problem is and solve the problem. This isn't a lynching or whatever. This isn't a going out and getting somebody. This is, my goodness, we have an issue here. Well, vehicles hit things. They should not hit things ahead, especially when they're going 25 miles an hour. Now, sure, a deer ran out in front of me. I never saw it. I didn't have a chance in the world. Newton wouldn't have helped me. Okay, sure. But those are few, far between, low probability, extremely low probability. Well, always, no way to get around those. It's the rest of them that we can really do something about. And that's what, to me, the automated emergency braking system, and what Elon may not have understood with that. Not to suggest that Elon doesn't understand something, but he didn't understand. Automated emergency braking on a vehicle is supposed to be on all the time. It's a guardian angel on me in case I go south and keeps me from hitting something. I shouldn't be able to turn it off. That should be on the vehicle. Autopilot, full self-driving, I turn a switch. I turn it on, turn it off. I might buy a Tesla and never turn it on. So it's automated emergency braking shouldn't be part of autopilot, shouldn't be part of full self-driving. It's a it's a floor, it's a base. And on top of that, this thing, I built this. So that when I do turn on autopilot, of course, it has automated emergency brake. That's the thing that keeps me from hitting it. Okay. I don't know, just my way of thinking. If he really thought of it that way, he could fix this instantaneously. He could run his stuff on that, get a new solution, boom, fixed instantaneously, I think. I just don't think that that's fundamental concept isn't, nah, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm completely wrong on this one, but whatever.
Tim?
Well, it's interesting. Alan hit on this, the mention, he heard Elon talking about safety a lot. I think some watching the presentation come to it with concerns about the general approach of safety that Tesla has been taking when they look at autopilot and how the kind of the boisterous claims that of what it can do. And, clearly some people have been misusing it, right? The lack of safeguards, if you will, whether it's eye tracking or sensors in the wheel to detect engagement. And this is kind of a tension that we've seen from Elon wanting to deploy the technology in a way that doesn't have nags, that it's seamless, versus what some of his rivals have been doing, concerned about misuse in a greater way. And as NHTSA looks into autopilot in some these crashes, that's kind of in the background. Is Tesla deploying this state-of-the-art technology in the safest way possible? Elon would say the data would show it that Tesla with autopilot is safer than without it. But clearly some in the industry are frustrated with the approach. And so when we hear him talking at this AI event about fully self-driving, the future of autonomy, these two things kind of get mixed together. His record with autopilot colors people's views on how he's working on fully self-driving for the future.
Well, he calls it full self-driving, but this week another development, a couple of senators calling for a Federal Trade Commission investigation into their use of the phrase full self-driving.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I'm talking about fully self-driving, I'm meaning full, like autonomous, level 4, level 5, which I think is what the event, the AI Day was about. But to your point, this FSD product that's out there clearly is not fully self-driving in the idea of level 4, level 5. It is an ADAS system. And I think a lot of people are questioning why the company is selling something that would seem to suggest capabilities that it doesn't have. Even if you do read the fine print and it kind of spells out what it can do, I think there's a lot of frustration out there over that. Is
there fine print? If I go in and I buy a Tesla and I say, okay, here's my $10,000, I want full self-driving, or the promise of full self-driving, what does the fine print tell me about that, or warn me about it?
That's a good question. If you go on the website and you look at the things that it offers, it's pretty vague, but, they've got summons on there and some of these other things. But, clearly some people are buying it thinking they're getting fully self-driving, or that it's just around the corner. And, that will be something that Tesla's going to have to deal with.
I think on that point, I know, I mean, I'm just wondering whether it's that part of some of that might just be some clickbait out there and so on. I'm wondering how many people that bought Teslas paid for really want to turn it back in and get their money back. I'm 10% less. I don't know. It seems
most of them that I've talked to seem pretty happy with their vehicles.
It seems that everybody, what he should do is he should just say he shouldn't be Trumpian and say, hey, I can never assume that I did something wrong or something like that. Just go and change the names and call it, call smart summon, stupid summon, as I call it, call full self-driving, no self-driving or something. I don't know, just change it or whatever, and just move on from, because this, well, the issue's gotten him a lot of press. It's gotten him a lot of ink. It's done his marketing for him. It's as we can see with anybody, you're on one side of the line or the other side of the line. You're not going to move for it. You hear about it, whatever, in a sense. Probably if one did a marketing analysis on the whole darn thing and looked at the return on investment that the dude at that time, pay the damn fines, send it back to the people. We're just fine, thank you. Or I don't know.
But what you are saying too, from what you saw this week with the AI day, is that there's an awful lot of substance behind the promise.
Well, hey, for my whatever mind, I just said to myself, I look at some of these other entities that are out there trying to do some of this stuff, and I pointed out in the newsletter last week with, this drive of a truck in China, which looked totally staged to me, but whatever. And all the people that are making, are you joking? And really, and so on out there. But of course, I buy high, sell low. So what can I tell you? But what I heard 2 days ago was, wow. I mean, there is some substance here.
Couple of other quick headlines to get to before we close things out. California's gig worker law has just been ruled unconstitutional by a state superior court judge.
Well, it's that thing's going back and forth, but that can't be good news to Uber and Lyft. And one wonders, what their fundamental business model is here. And if your objective is to provide high quality, affordable, sustainable mobility, you've got to be able to do ride sharing, and to be affordable, you can't afford a chauffeur. So and if you can't get people to work for free, do it yourself. I don't know how you do that. So, it's a great model, but, you got to be able to do those. Those are fundamentals. This isn't a little nuanced detail.
The other headline, Waymo is building a hub for its autonomous trucks in Texas. And you're thinking back to Too Simple in the stories of the week.
Well, and Too Simple. And so I think, sure. But of course, my feeling on all of that is that there's a lot of improvements one could do in the logistics system of the United States and in trucks, is to just improve the work environment for truckers, and to just provide them with what they feel, not a car driver, a truck driver feels is really some good driver assistance to make their lives better. I just drove back from Maine to Princeton. I mean, I'm up to Maine and back, GWB and all that stuff. I did, I've done it 2 trips this year. It drove me nuts. These folks do this 10 hours a day. This is how they earn. This is how they feed their families. To keep something between 2 white lines and not hit anything. Talk about where you need a robot. I mean, and they need some help. And the shame of it is, to me, again, and I argued it, Peloton, when they were trying to do whatever they were trying to do, and all the various others, if you're really working to do stuff for Class 8s, And the trucking industry, don't be, at least not today, be looking at taking truck drivers out of the truck. Truck driver costs you about, I don't know, 65 cents a mile, 70 cents a mile. Too Simple wants to collect 35 cents of that for their stack to replace that person. But you got to really replace them. To replace them, you have to, how many nines do you need on that safety thing before I'm not going to go nuts when I look at this thing that's like next to me on the Pennsylvania Turnpike or on the New York State Thruway or on the GWB, and I'm not going to, be dialing 911. That's not going to come anytime soon, I don't think. But you could deliver so much value to every trucking CEO, to every trucking operation, to every trucker, if you could then just focus on improving the quality of life of that individual. And then maybe the federal government can give them another hours of service. Why? Because on 11 hours of service versus 10, they'll actually be better individuals psychologically. I mean, to me, that's the sweet spot of that market, not to take the driver out. So I don't see Too Simple's business model. I just don't see it.
Tim, any thoughts?
Well, the roadways you talked about are complex. You look at some of those roadways in Texas or Arizona or New Mexico. There's a lot of straight goes, and the weather is oftentimes not as nasty as the East Coast, and you maybe start to see how the early robots can be deployed in that route, right? I mean, if it's pretty, it's a pretty set route, back and forth, a lot of traffic, a lot of freight traffic already, you start to understand maybe the business model. But to your point, that you start to you work your way through all the possibilities of problems, and that's where we are with autonomy, right? Robot taxis. I mean, it's a lot harder. It's been a lot harder to deploy than a lot of people thought.
Yeah, and I'll your comment. Yes, there is some traffic out there. Some people might say it's a lot. Where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of truck traffic on the GWB,
right?
On the Cross Bronx Expressway,
yeah.
On the New Jersey Turnpike, in the Northeast. That's where, I mean, yeah,
super complex traffic.
So if you really want to, if you're going to do a business that's going to scale,
yeah,
okay, if you want to do onesie twosies, sure, but the onesie twosies, the stack you have to put on that truck is going to cost you more than 35 cents a vehicle mile. And you're asking for 35 cents a vehicle mile. So when you do your balance sheet, how's there any return? So you got to get through the beginning of this thing to be able to hit the GWB market, where you get the economies of scale. The scale why is Waymo not successful in Chandler? I'm throwing out the thing that there's no market for it. Everybody owns too many cars anyway. Whether they would need a Waymo out there too. Sure, Disneyland will take a ride every once in a while, have some fun. That's not a business. You don't sell many lemonades at your lemonade stand if that's all you're doing. You need some volume of folks. It needs to be a hot summer day, man. You gotta be at the beach or something. Then your lemonade stand might make some money. I don't know.
Which I think you're making the case that Cruise is making. Well, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it in San Francisco, where it's ultra complex, and you can make. Yeah,
no, I'd say Trenton. I think San Francisco has. I'm going to make Trenton happen, but whatever. Or the Trentons of this world. There are some pockets of places where people really could use the mobility anyway. But there has to, in the end, there has to be a market. I think Elon, has had to create the market for the electric vehicle. Otherwise, it was only going to be a toy that Californians bought. Guess what happened in the beginning? It was only a toy that Californians bought. Nobody bought a Tesla that didn't already have a fleet of cars in their driveway, because they knew they couldn't rely. I mean, but that was the beauty of getting started. He at least got started there and let them go to the next step. the vision of the Model 3 was always to work down and start at the top and work down into the market.
Yep.
Well, terrific. We want to thank you, Tim, for taking the time with us. The book is called Power Play: Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. Thank you, and congratulations again, Tim.
Thank you. It's always a delight to be here.
And you'll have to put out sort of edition number 2 or something, and add some more on top of it or whatever, and so on. It certainly is exciting. It's wonderful to see.
Thank you.
It's really wonderful to see.
And the saga continues. Thanks to our sponsor, the Smart ETFs, Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO, and more information is available at motoetf.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, Amazon, SoundCloud, wherever you get podcasts. Your smart speaker can play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching, and please stay safe.
And thank you again, Tim. Thank you. Enjoyed.